Welcome to Quiet Night Chronicles, where we explore the gentle wisdom of traditional crafts and ancient practices. Tonight, we journey to the highlands and valleys of Ethiopia to discover the peaceful art of constructing grain storage huts. These remarkable structures, built with patient hands and generations of knowledge, protected the precious harvests that sustained entire communities. Let us settle into this quiet exploration of how these ingenious buildings came to be, maintained through seasons and years with the same steady care that marks all enduring human traditions. In the rolling landscapes of Ethiopia, where golden fields of teff, barley, and sorghum sway in gentle breezes, farmers have long understood that the harvest's true value lies not just in the gathering, but in the keeping. For countless generations, they developed specialized structures designed solely for storing grain, creating buildings that were both practical marvels and testaments to human ingenuity. These storage huts, known by various names across different regions, represented a careful balance between protection and accessibility, between tradition and adaptation to local conditions. Picture yourself walking through an Ethiopian village at twilight, when the air carries the earthy scents of recently completed construction. The grain storage huts stand quietly among the other buildings, distinguished by their thoughtful design and sturdy presence. Unlike homes or gathering places, these structures served a single, vital purpose with unwavering dedication. Each hut represented months of careful planning, community cooperation, and the application of knowledge refined over centuries of agricultural life in this ancient land. The selection of materials for these storage huts followed patterns as old as the hills themselves, each component chosen for specific qualities that would serve the grain's long-term protection. Clay-rich soil formed the foundation of the building mixture, its fine particles creating the dense, water-resistant base that would protect against moisture infiltration. This earth was carefully selected from deposits known to produce the strongest, most durable building material, often located near riverbanks or in areas where seasonal flooding had deposited the finest sediments. Cow dung, far from being merely an available material, brought crucial binding properties to the mixture, its fibrous content creating natural reinforcement, while its organic compounds provided mild antimicrobial protection. Farmers collected this material during specific seasons, allowing it to cure and develop the optimal consistency for construction. Chopped straw, usually from teff or barley stalks, was incorporated as a third essential element, creating a composite material that was both strong and surprisingly flexible. The selection of construction sites required equal care and consideration, with builders seeking elevated ground that would naturally shed rainwater away from the structure's foundation. The foundation work began with the quiet ceremony of site preparation, as community members gathered in the early morning hours, when the air was cool and the work could proceed at a comfortable pace. The chosen location was cleared and leveled with hand tools, creating a perfectly flat surface that would support the structure's weight evenly across its footprint. In many regions, builders constructed elevated foundations using carefully selected stones, creating a barrier between the stored grain and the potentially damp earth below. These stone foundations were laid with meticulous attention to drainage, ensuring that water would flow away from rather than toward the storage area. The structural framework rose from this foundation using locally sourced timber, typically from trees that had been carefully selected and allowed to dry over an extended period. Posts were set into the foundation with the precision of experienced craftsmen, their placement calculated to support not just the weight of the walls and roof, but also the substantial load of grain that would fill the completed structure. Each joint was carefully fitted and secured, creating a framework that would flex slightly with seasonal temperature changes while maintaining its essential stability and strength. The wall construction represented perhaps the most meditative aspect of the entire building process, requiring patience, rhythm, and the gentle application of traditional knowledge passed down through countless generations. The building mixture, known locally as chica, was prepared in large batches, with the consistency carefully monitored to ensure optimal workability and eventual durability. Workers applied this mixture by hand, building up the walls in layers that were allowed to dry partially before the next application, creating a construction rhythm that matched the natural pace of rural life. Each layer was smoothed and shaped with simple tools, often just the builder's hands and wooden implements worn smooth by years of use. The walls gradually rose, thick and substantial, their generous depth providing excellent insulation that would keep the interior temperature stable throughout the changing seasons. As the work progressed, small openings were incorporated into the design, carefully positioned to provide necessary ventilation while preventing the entry of rain or unwanted pests. The final surface was often polished smooth with flat stones, creating walls that were not only functional, but possessed a quiet beauty that reflected the care invested in their construction. The roof design demanded particular attention to the challenge of weather protection while maintaining the delicate balance of internal air circulation that would keep stored grain in optimal condition. Builders constructed steep pitched roofs that would shed the heaviest rains quickly and efficiently, using locally available thatching materials that had been carefully prepared and sorted according to traditional methods. The underlying framework consisted of precisely cut and fitted rafters, their angles calculated through generations of experience to provide maximum strength with minimum material use. Bamboo or strong grass stems were layered in overlapping patterns, each layer contributing to the roof's overall water-shedding capability, while allowing for the subtle air movement that prevented condensation from forming on the interior surfaces. Special attention was paid to the eaves, where small gaps were deliberately incorporated to allow air circulation without permitting rain entry. These ventilation gaps represented sophisticated understanding of airflow principles, creating convection currents that would naturally regulate the storage environment. The completed roof stood as a testament to the builder's understanding of local weather patterns, designed to withstand the particular challenges of Ethiopian seasonal rains, while maintaining the dry, stable conditions essential for long-term grain storage. Inside these carefully constructed shells, the organization of space reflected deep understanding of grain storage principles and the practical needs of farming families who would rely on these stores throughout the year. Large ceramic storage jars, known locally by various regional names, were positioned with careful consideration of accessibility and protection from temperature fluctuations. These vessels, often crafted by specialized potters in the community, represented another layer of storage technology. Their smooth interior surfaces and tight-fitting lids providing additional protection against pests and moisture. Some storage huts featured multiple types of containers, with woven baskets lined with mud plaster, serving to hold different grain varieties or seeds saved for the following season's planting. The arrangement of these vessels followed patterns that maximized the use of available space, while ensuring that frequently needed grains remained easily accessible. Pathways between storage areas were carefully planned, allowing people to move through the space without disturbing other stored materials. The floor itself received special treatment, often covered with flat stones that had been carefully selected and fitted, or covered with a specially prepared mixture of mud and ash that dried to create a smooth, moisture-resistant surface that could be easily cleaned and maintained throughout the storage season. As each agricultural year progressed through its predictable cycle, the maintenance of grain storage huts followed equally predictable patterns, with specific tasks timed to coincide with seasonal changes and the demands of the farming calendar. The arrival of the dry season signaled the beginning of comprehensive maintenance routines, when families would carefully inspect every aspect of their storage structures before the next harvest required their use. Wall surfaces were examined for cracks or signs of wear, with any damaged areas carefully repaired, using fresh applications of the traditional mud mixture. This maintenance work often became a community activity, with neighbors contributing labor and materials according to well-established patterns of mutual support and reciprocal obligation. The roof received particular attention during these seasonal inspections, with worn or damaged thatching materials replaced, and the overall water-shedding capability tested and reinforced where necessary. Storage vessels were removed, cleaned thoroughly, and treated with preparations made from aromatic herbs that would help protect the next season's grain from pests and spoilage. These maintenance routines represented more than simple building care. They embodied the agricultural community's commitment to food security and the preservation of resources that would sustain families through the months between harvests. Traditional preservation methods employed in these storage systems reflected generations of accumulated knowledge about protecting grain from the various threats that could compromise food security throughout the storage period. Natural pest control began with the preparation of the storage containers themselves, which were often treated with smoke from burning aromatic plants, known to repel insects and rodents. Neem leaves, valued for their natural pest-repelling properties, were commonly mixed directly with stored grain or burned within the storage huts to create protective smoke that would permeate the entire structure. Diatomaceous earth, when available, was sometimes mixed with grain as a natural desiccant and pest deterrent, its microscopic particles creating an environment hostile to insects while remaining harmless to humans. The timing of these preservation treatments followed careful patterns, with most applications occurring during specific phases of the agricultural calendar, when their effectiveness would be maximized. Community members shared knowledge about which plants provided the best protection against particular pests, and where to find these materials during their optimal seasons for collection and preparation. These preservation methods represented sustainable approaches to food protection that worked in harmony with natural systems, avoiding the need for external inputs while maintaining the grain's nutritional value and safety for human consumption throughout extended storage periods. Across the diverse regions of Ethiopia, grain storage hut construction adapted to local conditions, materials, and cultural preferences, while maintaining the essential principles that made these structures effective protectors of stored food. In highland areas where stone was readily available, foundations were often built entirely of carefully fitted rocks, creating exceptionally durable bases that could last for generations with minimal maintenance. Valley regions, with access to different types of clay and organic materials, developed variations in wall construction that took advantage of locally abundant resources. Coastal and lowland areas, where different weather patterns prevailed, adapted roof designs and ventilation systems to address their particular environmental challenges. These regional variations demonstrated the flexibility of traditional building knowledge, showing how fundamental principles could be adapted to diverse circumstances while maintaining their essential effectiveness. Construction techniques also varied among different ethnic groups, each community developing particular refinements and improvements based on their specific agricultural practices and storage needs. Despite these variations, the underlying wisdom remained consistent. The need to create dry, stable, pest-free environments that would protect grain from harvest season until consumption, using locally available materials and community labor, organized according to traditional patterns of cooperation and mutual support. The cultural significance of grain storage huts extended far beyond their practical function, embodying community values, social relationships, and the deep connection between human societies and the agricultural cycles that sustained them. Construction of a new storage hut often marked important transitions in family life, perhaps coinciding with the marriage, the maturation of children into adult responsibilities, or the expansion of farming activities to new areas. Community participation in construction work represented more than simple labor sharing. It demonstrated the social bonds that held agricultural communities together and the shared commitment to food security that benefited everyone. Knowledge about construction techniques passed from older to younger generations through direct participation in building projects, ensuring that essential skills remained alive and available when needed. The completed storage huts stood as symbols of successful harvests, prudent planning, and the community's ability to work together toward common goals. Their presence in the landscape represented security and continuity, visible reminders that the community possessed both the knowledge and the social organization necessary to protect their food supply through whatever challenges the seasons might bring. These structures embodied the agricultural wisdom that recognized successful farming required not just good growing conditions and hard work, but also the technical knowledge and social cooperation necessary to preserve the fruits of that labor until they were needed. The knowledge systems that supported traditional grain storage hut construction represented sophisticated understanding of building science, agricultural principles, and environmental management developed through centuries of careful observation and practical experience. builders understood the thermal properties of different materials and how wall thickness would affect internal temperature stability throughout seasonal changes. They grasped the principles of moisture control, designing structures that would maintain optimal humidity levels without the need for external monitoring or control systems. Ventilation systems reflected deep understanding of air movement patterns and how to create the subtle circulation necessary for maintaining grain quality without allowing pest entry or weather damage. The selection and preparation of organic materials demonstrated knowledge of how different substances would interact over time, creating composite building materials that improved with age rather than deteriorating. Construction scheduling followed patterns that took advantage of seasonal weather conditions, ensuring that each phase of building work occurred during optimal conditions for the specific tasks involved. This traditional knowledge represented sustainable building practices that worked in harmony with natural systems, creating structures that served their intended purpose effectively, while requiring minimal external resources for construction or maintenance. The persistence of these techniques across generations demonstrated their effectiveness and the value of preserving traditional knowledge systems that offer alternatives to more resource-intensive modern approaches. As we draw toward the close of our gentle exploration of traditional Ethiopian grain storage huts, we can appreciate the remarkable synthesis of practical knowledge, community cooperation, and environmental wisdom that these structures represent. From the careful selection of building sites and materials, through the patient construction process that brought communities together in shared labor, to the ongoing maintenance routines that ensured continued effectiveness. Every aspect of these buildings reflected deep understanding of the relationship between human needs and environmental resources. These storage huts served not just as practical protection for precious grain, but as embodiments of cultural values that prioritized community cooperation, environmental sustainability, and the careful stewardship of resources that would sustain life through changing seasons. Their construction techniques offer modern observers insights into building approaches that achieved remarkable effectiveness, using locally available materials and human-scale technologies that remain accessible to rural communities. The preservation methods employed in these systems provide examples of sustainable pest management that worked in harmony with natural processes, rather than attempting to override them. In this quiet exploration of ancient building wisdom, we discover approaches to construction and food preservation that speak to timeless human needs for security, sustainability, and community cooperation. These Ethiopian grain storage huts remind us that effective solutions to practical challenges often emerge from patient observation, careful experimentation, and the accumulated wisdom of many generations, working together toward common goals. Their legacy continues in rural communities, where these techniques remain in use, adapted to modern conditions, but retaining their essential effectiveness and their embodiment of sustainable approaches to meeting human needs. As we prepare to rest, we can carry with us the peaceful image of these sturdy structures standing quietly in the landscape, protecting their precious contents while representing the enduring human capacity to create solutions that serve both practical needs and deeper values of community and environmental stewardship. If you found this journey peaceful, consider subscribing to Quiet Night Chronicles for more restful explorations. Until next time, sleep well.